Okay, and we're off. Welcome everybody to our DeltaV Code 401 final project presentations for this second cohort of 2020. So really excited for that. As always, we like to thank our sponsors. Some of our sponsors have been with us from the very beginning, so huge thanks to UFG Insurance and CCR and HLT, Higher Learning Technologies, Transamerica, has really contributed a lot to our Diversity Tuition Awards funds, Leapfrog, and Midwest Microwave Solutions. So huge thanks to all of you. Shout out also to CCR for sponsoring some students to go through our new curriculum, which is our help desk and network and systems administration curriculum that we're going to launch in November. So CCR as well as Involta have committed to hiring folks in those positions and sending them through the new DeltaV curriculum, as well as Project Iowa out of Des Moines. So we're super excited for that. If you like what you see here today and you think this might be interesting to you, we have another Code 101 coming up, which is basically an intro to this world to see if it's something that you might be interested in or something you might like. It's still being held over Zoom. The next one is Saturday, November 21st, and it's pretty much an all-day thing, but you're going to learn essentially how to build a website, and you're going to build a website and then have something to show off. So if you're interested in that, we're still running them free through the end of the year. And the website for that is deltavcodeschool.com/101. So Mark will be your instructor for that. And like I've already mentioned, we have new curriculum launching on November 16th, and we have a new instructor too. So Dan Turry is going to be our ops instructor. So this is a little bit different than code in that, with the DeltaV Code School, you really should intend to go through the full 20-week program if you're looking to have a career change into software development. Whereas this new curriculum, the 102 and the 201 would really get you prepared for an entry-level help desk position, and you could just stop after that if that's what you're looking for. If you want to go on to network and systems administration, you just tack on that 4 weeks after that for a total of 9 weeks, and then you stop and get that job. And right now there are full tuition awards available thanks to employer innovation funds from the state for those that have been impacted by COVID-19. So if you think that might be you, if you want more information on that, or just to look into the curriculum itself, if you head to ops.deltav.school, you'll come to a landing page that kind of spells out the differences between the help desk and the network and system administration tracks, and then you can contact us for more information on that. So that's all I had for the intro. Keith, when I start promoting the team to participants, do you want to do an intro for them?
Sure.
All right.
Cool. Well, I guess while Aaron's working on that, I just want to, so this is my 6th cohort of 401 students. And, as I say every time, every cohort's different. This cohort has been dominated by 2020 has just been a year. We've had, a couple of folks weren't able to finish, started 401, but weren't able to finish due to life circumstances. And so this, this has just been a very up and down kind of year for everybody here. But, at the end of the day, the students came, they showed up, day in and day out, putting in long hours. It's hard enough to just listen to somebody lecturing for 3 hours. It's even harder when it's through a computer screen, just staring at your computer, literally, 10 plus hours every day. It's just draining. But the students have stuck with it, and we're all really proud of how far they've come. So for one, just thanks to the students for their patience. I'm still just getting used to this whole virtual instruction thing, still evolving the curriculum. And so, their patience has been greatly appreciated on my part. I want to thank all the NewBoCo staff many of whom are in the audience. So thank you all for coming up and supporting this program. Thanks to the DeltaV staff in particular, Craig preparing these students well in 201. Shout out to Mark, our 101 instructor, who also taught some of the 301 material for this group. Finally to Andy and Aaron for their kind of all the behind the scenes work they do getting students into the program. Hugely grateful to them. Shout out to our TAs, Stacy and Chase, who both went through this program in the prior cohort. So having TAs that were more familiar with the curriculum proved very beneficial, and the students have had nothing but good things to say about those TAs. So shout out to Chase and Stacy. You should hire them. And then finally, I want to thank my wife. While I'm teaching, it's hard for me to do much of anything else. So thank you, Samantha, for all the time that you've spent with kids while I was unable to help. Now it's my turn. So yeah, with that, I will introduce the gathering group so they can show us what they built on top of their midterm project.
Let me know if you have any screen sharing. It should work.
Is that showing up okay?
We got it.
All right, awesome. Let's see. Well, hello everybody and welcome. Thanks for joining us for our final project for DeltaV 401 final presentation. This project week tacked on to our midterm project, which was to build a backend API for what you're going to see today. And so with that, we'll get started.
Hello, my name is Enrique Hills, and I have passions in problem solving and efficiency. I took these passions into industrial engineering for 2 years and now applying them to software development. I enjoyed working as an industrial engineer, especially when I was working with cross-functional teams to come up with efficient solutions and identifying root problems. However, I've often found myself most excited about learning and using new technologies. So this made me realize I'd be happier pursuing a career in tech. So I'm now looking for a company to join and apply what I've learned as an engineer and a software developer.
Hi, my name is Jen Jones. I am a software developer with a background in marketing and small business development. I got involved in coding because I spent a lot of time in marketing and a lot of time with unstructured data, but I wanted to learn more about how to turn those user stories or customer journeys into user interfaces, and then also take data and make it accessible for decision making. So I'm looking for a position that takes that blend of skills and puts it to use to make coding more accessible and make a better user experience.
Hi, my name is Christian Levero, and I'm a software developer. I recently decided to make a career change and follow my dreams to work in the tech industry. I've always been interested in technology in general. I tried a few classes in college that really sparked my interest for coding. And I've always wanted to work with a team to help create technologies that will help people in their daily lives. One thing that really piques my interest with coding is I feel like the opportunities are endless for growth, and I'll be able to take my passion for problem solving and put it to good use. I look forward to becoming part of a team and building not only as a member of that team, but also just to expand my knowledge as far as I can as a software developer.
I'm Eric. I have a background in automotive. I excelled at that, but didn't like how it destroyed my passion for working on cars outside of work. So I decided to look for another field. I chose this field because it involves some of the same problem solving skills that I have used and enjoy using. And I just think it's also a good outlet for me to incorporate some of my creativity too.
Great. And then John Struve, who joined us as one of our team members for the backend development, has left the course for a job position. And so we're happy for him, but we wanted to acknowledge his contribution to the first part of this project. So gathering, the purpose of this web app, it solves a problem for users who are not on Facebook, but they want to stay engaged with a group of people and want to communicate with each other about upcoming events, plan events, and continue to stay connected before, during, and after a special occasion or upcoming event. The development process, just to walk you through our sequence a little bit. So we started with backend development. We built an API using .NET and Microsoft Server SQL. Then this week, we worked on the front end. We built a user interface using React and Node.js, among other things. Also some Bootstrap in there. And so the third part of this was connecting all of these pieces together. So we hooked up the routing, the hosting, the API calls, authorization, permissions, tokens, etc.
When we began planning, we started out by just looking back at what we had built for the back end, all the things that we were able to do, and then we created user stories around those to be able to lay out all the specific things, all the pages we're going to need, all the specific things we want on each page. Then we switched over to wireframing. We built out how each of the pages, how we wanted them to look, wanted to display some of the functionalities that we thought we wanted to have on each page. And then the last step was we just sat down, took those wireframes and just started writing code to make those wireframes come to life.
Some of the problems we ran into were styling with Bootstrap. It was new to most of us, and it was a lot of experimentation. And then working with the API that we had already made. So there were certain things that we didn't account for during the first part of this project. And then routing, because we decided to use React rather than .NET. We only spent a week learning it, so there was a lot of things that we didn't get to, didn't touch on. So it was a lot of exploration to try and figure out on our own.
And now I'll demo our app. You see that okay? Okay. This is our login page. This is what you see when you go to home if you're not logged in. So I'll go and register a new user. Put my name. Make a username and password. Enter in an email. And a phone number. Oops. My birthday. And hit register. Now it's talking to the backend to sign me in with this new account. So it takes a second. Surprised that happened. Okay, so also signed in here already. So I have a group, and the group has these different events going on. I can click on event details and see all the details for this event specifically. And then I can click on the group page and see the events as well. And if I want to add a user, I click here and enter in a user ID. What we would like to do in the future, though, is to be able to enter in someone's email or the phone number and get them out of that way. And then I can add an event as well. So I'll say graduation party. Let's put in some info real quick here. It's free, and it's on next Saturday with the start time.
You actually need to enter a 0. Otherwise, we get that validation error.
And you can see the graduation party has been added here. It also activates the backend API to text everybody, since we had that set up in the backend using Tool. So now everyone in the group can respond and set their status as going or not going, maybe, using the text message interface. And that's everything we have. And thank you. Are there any questions?
All right, feel free to use the chat if you have a question, or the Q&A feature, or if you want to raise your hand, use the Zoom feature to raise your hand. We can allow you to talk, so you can ask your question in person if you want. So Naomi from UFG in the chat asked, if you had more time, what would you add next or do better?
Yeah, one thing I mentioned was we would like to be able to add users using different information than just their user ID.
One thing I had in mind was making an actual page for your own user profile, so you're able to fill out a bunch of things about yourself, and so when you send friend requests and invite people, they know who and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think for me also, we'd probably enhance a little bit more, just some styling stuff. We had talked about creating a logo specifically for Gathering, just a couple more personalization things, like being able to add your own photo of yourself, that sort of thing. I think would be our next steps.
Anything to add, Eric?
Yeah, I probably spent some time on the back end, maybe make it easier to interact with, and just be able to display more things within the app. For example, we had started making status badges, whether you were like attending or not, but we weren't getting that info from the back end, so we weren't able to finish that.
Yeah, that's true. And then another thing on the back end is that we would have to add would be steps to be able to change your status, like actually on the web page. Right now, you can only do that through Twilio.
Okay. Alex asked, what was the biggest takeaway you learned that you would share with others that want to participate in DeltaV?
I'd do it. I mean, if you want to do it, do it. Definitely an enjoyable experience. I got a lot out of it. I think I'm coming out of it with way more knowledge than I expected to come out of it with.
Yeah, I would agree there. Also, it seems like DeltaV has more career support than the other boot camps that I shopped around for. So really like that part of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the career support has been amazing. But also the fact that if you're not a technical person, this is something that you can pick up and start from the very beginning. And it, you know, the first couple days I was intimidated, mostly because of my lack of knowledge on this topic. And I'm just impressed at to look back and see how much I've done and how much we've done as a group. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with all of that. And another big takeaway is DeltaV really shows you, even if you don't believe in yourself right away, there's so many people to help you and get you through it that you come out on the other side really believing in yourself. You just, away from all the technical stuff, you just really really add something to you after you complete the whole course.
Awesome. Rory asks, what was the most challenging part of the UI?
We mentioned the using React was a little bit more difficult than using like the MVC and .NET. So definitely the routing part and figuring out how to switch the pages was pretty difficult.
I think one of the challenges with this project was that it was a two-part project, and one of our team members who originated the idea and who was sort of the architect, John, at the beginning of it in terms of the planning process, and really had an idea and a vision for the ERD, isn't around or participating in the day-to-day on the project side of it. That was an adjustment for us because we had one fewer people to really talk through some of the architecture, like I said. But I think this was also really in that aspect, I think it was really good practice probably for future job situations where you could be handed a project where it was somebody else's vision from the beginning. They, for whatever reason, are not on the project anymore. Maybe they've left the company, or maybe they're just working on something else. And that we had to continue to carry the ball and figure out, you know, using one of the things that was really helpful to do that was that we took a look at our user stories. We did a really good job constructing them on the upfront. And at the beginning of this part 2 project, we revisited those to make sure that we felt those were still relevant, those were still our priority in terms of carrying them through to the front end. And so on both sides of this project, our user stories really guided what our priorities were, and then in the end, our front end implementation.
Speaking of John, he actually asked, with only a week to learn React, what was one of the harder things to figure out? I think Enrique might have touched on that a little bit, but did anybody else have any thoughts about what was hard to figure out in React?
There's just a lot to learn with Bootstrap. I think that it's really valuable and useful, and I love working with it. And so that might be something that I continue with after we're done here, is to learn more about it and learn how to implement it to on a deeper level.
I'd say like routes and passing things between pages. I don't think we had enough to cover everything in a week. So we just had to kind of go off on our own for some of that and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's true. But again, I think that's probably normal in a job situation too, where it's like, you know, some of it, but you don't know everything you need to know. And so this also tested our ability to find the information we needed to complete the project.
What are your thoughts, Christian?
Yeah, they about summed it up pretty well. I don't have anything extra.
And so just for context, for those kind of new to the audience, we used to teach a full second half of the course was React. And so that was really like 3 full weeks of React plus some kind of an extra exploratory week. The group before this, we did 2 weeks of React plus 1 week of .NET before that. And that was just not quite enough .NET, we didn't feel. And so this is the first time we've ever tried to do a 1 week React. Then the students were given the option if they wanted to try .NET, pros and cons, or React, pros and cons. The React was a little more fresh, so I think that's what they defaulted to. But this was definitely an experiment, and I was pleased with how far they were able to get with really just a week of React instruction.
So you guys touched on React. Jennifer Murphy asked, what technologies did you use in the project?
Yeah, the backend is built on .NET with C#. And then we use the Twilio API for sending out text messages. And then we mentioned the front end is built on React with React Bootstrap and Node.js to interact with the API.
Okay. She also asked, what part of developing this project did you find the most challenging, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, what I touched on before about like the routing, that was really the most difficult part. And then having to change the front end to do something that we want, realize that the back end wasn't doing what we needed it to do, and then going back to the back end, updating it, and then going back to the front end and testing it to make sure that it worked was pretty difficult.
What about the rest of you?
I think that it wasn't the most challenging. Well, I'd say that the ERD, in terms of when you're starting out with a back end and not really knowing what you're going to be able to use or know to build out the front end, or if you're going to do that. I think building out the ERD based on what we knew at the time, and then now that we have the front end and we know and we've extended out what those user stories look like and what we think that the user would want, there's a couple of things that I think that we would have changed in terms of how things link together, maybe how certain keys work, whether they're primary, composite, what have you. And I just think we might have just designed the ERD just a little bit differently than than the way we did at the beginning.
I'd have to agree with Enrique on it was just getting the information to go where we needed it to on the front end, and just the way we overcame it was we just all every day put our heads together and each did our own little research, try to put the pieces together, and we were able to overcome that roadblock.
I think frequent stand-ups and agile sprints were really helpful to this process. Even though we had challenges, I think going through them and stepping through what have we each been able to achieve, either paired up or on our own within a given time frame, and what stands in our way to get to the next point. I think that was really helpful, particularly when you've got a project where you're connecting pieces back and forth. There's a lot of opportunity, especially the more people you have on a project, the more opportunity there is to maybe get stuff crossed or have stuff not duplicate efforts maybe, or even think that somebody is doing something when nobody's doing it. And I think that was really helpful with our stand-ups to be able to clarify and continue to move forward.
Great. Well, our friend Matthew Barnhart is brave and has his hand raised, so I'm going to allow to talk so he can ask his question in person.
Allow me to talk. Thank you, oh great gatekeeper.
That's what the button literally says in Zoom, allow to talk.
Allowed to talk. Oh, so permission giving. I love it. I have two questions for you guys. I have heard you mention on several occasions an ERD. Can you speak to what that is and what its value is?
It's a entity relationship diagram, and that is just like the schematic of how the database is laid out. So like what tables connect to what tables.
Yep, it's the blueprint that drives the build for the database.
Cool. Also, I was really interested when you guys had said that you were using the Twilio API to send text messages. Is that right?
Mhm.
Can you talk more to that experience working with that API and how it played out?
It was pretty interesting, just in the fact that we were bringing a whole different already built API into our project, and it was interesting to just figure out and problem solve the way through connecting it into our own project and getting it to do the things we needed it to do when we needed it to do it. It wasn't just something we built from the ground up, so we had to do, not only we had to wire it in, but we also had to do a lot of reading on it and figure out all the steps that we needed to get the process done.
We did have assignments after the midterm project to try to use other APIs, sending emails with SendGrid, connecting to the Azure Storage API. But before the midterm, we hadn't talked at all about how to interact with third-party stuff. So that was just kind of a stretch goal that the group had set for itself, and I had zero to do with it. They just figured it out on their own, and it's always gratifying to see that.
So do you send specific? Does it send dynamic information, I suppose? Like what populates those text messages that you receive?
When a text is sent to the Twilio API, our API gets a message body, and then we can pull information from that.
Super cool. Well, good work, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Matthew, I have to hit disable talking.
Oh, disable. Disable me, Aaron. Do it.
Done. Naomi asked a follow-up. Do any of you have any thoughts on what you might look into to speed up the new user creation piece upon entry to the application?
Like the register? See me?
User creation.
Yeah, I don't think we realized that was an issue until we started trying to do it through the deployed app. When we had done it locally, it just worked pretty instantly. So probably a half hour before presentation, we found out that runs a lot slower than we thought. I'm not 100% sure how you go about speeding that up. I don't know if that's something we can do or if that's just their end.
Do they have thoughts on how you might do that, or even how to go about like troubleshooting it? What would be the first thing you'd try to look at?
It seems like the delay would be between like Netlify and then from Netlify to our Azure app. So not really sure how to go about like testing for that. But it seems like it's just the passing around the information between the two APIs is what's slows it down.
But if you really want the answer, I'm sure Keith knows how.
I'm 90% certain it's validation. We didn't have enough time to really handle like, oh, hey, I'm guessing the phone number was invalid is probably what was the actual issue. You only had 8 characters, not 10. How many? Yeah, it was too short. So I'm pretty sure that was the actual problem. But yeah, we didn't, there's only so much we can do in a week, Naomi.
All right. Stacy asked what your biggest challenge was this week.
I think for me, it was just interacting with what we had. I think we had a general idea of what the front end would be, but I don't think when we were working on the back end, we had like a very concrete idea. I think having that would have helped. I think we did things in a way that made it easier to build out the back end, but when interacting with it with the front end made it slightly more difficult than it needed to be. We would have spent extra time on the back end.
Anybody else?
No, I think that that's a good point. I think that did make it difficult. And none of us are, that I'm aware of, are UX experts. So thinking about when we were building out the back end and thinking about how some of those things might extend out to end state, I don't know that we knew what scenario that would be when we made even just small decisions on the back end that ended up impacting things on the front end and then taking hours to try and figure out how to make it work. I think that we didn't realize that it would be more than just build out the back end. Okay, now let's build out the front end components, and now let's just like plug everything into an outlet, and it just boop, it just works. It just doesn't go like that. It takes a lot more than that.
Okay. Naomi has her hand raised. I'm gonna hit this button, but I'm not gonna say it.
I was gonna say, I asked the question specifically to kind of see how they might think through the what they found, and just that as you deployed into different environments, it's common to find glitches that you didn't expect. So that was a very good learning practice on your side. And I also wanted to comment that what I saw you guys show today was very well polished for the amount of time that you had to work on it and stuff. And it was actually very impressive. So good work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Craig Barkley asked, how was the shift from learning C# to learning React? And do you have a preference?
I think learning JavaScript first and spending a lot of time in JavaScript helped make React easier, and then learning like C# and then .NET stuff pretty quickly made that a bit more difficult. So I think that's part of the reason why we went to React as well. Like we felt a bit more comfortable with the JavaScript parts of the coding. So.
I don't have a preference as of right now. I liked both of them. Ish, like Enrique had touched on, though, we started on JavaScript for a while, and then to switch and just start learning all over again. And then we went back with React. It was a good learning experience. Just that teaching yourself that you can pick up something new, run with it, learn what you need to learn to get something going. But like I said, I don't have a preference at the time. I just would like to find that which one I do prefer by using both of them a little more.
Some of it for me was I liked working in VS Code again. I like the simplicity of it. I think that I think Visual Studio that we were using for C# has is so feature rich and has so much capability that for what we were doing with it at the beginning, I think it was super. It was complex to understand at first. And so I think because probably VS Code was our home for a couple of our courses, I think it was just nice to return to that towards the end of the course and towards the end of the program, just to be able to learn to do something new with it.
I wouldn't say I have a preference, but I think for me personally, the reason I voted for us to go and use React for the final project was the switching over period. I start like tripping up on things and writing like Frankenstein code. It's a mixture of both. So we switched from JavaScript to C# and like back to this React JavaScript type stuff. And I didn't want to spend the first 2 days of project this week writing Frankenstein type code again.
I struggle with that too.
Chase asked about, between .NET and React, what did you enjoy about using these frameworks to accomplish the project?
I'll say what I like about React is how quickly you can start building out the app using like the React Bootstrap components. You can get a form built really quickly, and like modals come in really quickly.
Yeah, that was I like the fact of like Enrique was saying, how you can with React it feels like you can move along through the code a lot faster with some of the built-in stuff, but that also has downsides when you're trying to do something else and then you have to understand what the built-in's doing.
Okay. Jen Joyce asked, was the journey to becoming a software developer what you thought it would be? And was it more difficult or easier than you imagined?
Say a little of both, but I think this year's been a little weird as well. So a lot of the extra difficulty came from things like hurricanes and things of that sort. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. So.
What the rest of you?
I thought it was, I kind of pictured it being a little hard, and I wouldn't say it was more difficult than I thought it was going to be, but it was hard at first, but things, once you start learning and the ball just starts rolling, it gets easier. And all I can really say is I'm glad I did it, and can't wait to see where I go with it.
Yeah, I kind of went in with an open mind, expecting it to be pretty difficult. I think at times it got more difficult than I expected, but pretty much what I expected, I think, for the most part.
I think for me, as a woman and a single mom in this program, I was intimidated going into it because I know there's so few of us in the industry. And so I kept waiting to find out why that is, and realizing, oh, this is why we're not in it, and that's why I want to leave. But that never happened. I could see where some aspects of it there might be some hurdles, but I never felt anything then absolutely equal to my classmates. And I think from a perspective of not only being fairly intimidated because of being a female in software, but also just not having a technical background. I was also worried about that. And really this is something that you could start doing with zero technical background. I mean, I was on a Mac before this for 8 years, and I didn't even know when we started doing this that the Mac had a terminal. So that was like a revelation one day pretty early on. And now I'm here doing this stuff. So that's pretty great for me.
Very cool. Rory had asked a question. So, having built the DB and the database and the API first, can you give some insight into the decision to build your user stories around what was in the API versus how the users would interact with the application? How did you navigate that?
I think there were a couple things we talked about where the decision was based on how the backend was built, just due to time constraints, and getting as much done as we could. But that definitely came into play. I think that's why earlier I said I think it would have been a good idea to get a more concrete idea of where we plan to go with the front end as we built out the back end.
Yes, I think that's true. I think also when we built out our or talked through our user stories at the very beginning of this, we didn't really talk through how will a user interact with the backend. We really thought of it as, okay, gathering app as a whole thing. As a user, I want to be able to do and then whatever it is. I think that having user stories that extended out all the way to the end and thinking about those from the very beginning really helped us out so that we could then kind of what Eric said, adjust our recalibrate our expectations when we were working on the front end to meet up with the back end capabilities. And there were times we went back this week into the back end and made changes to it so that we could accommodate the front end that we wanted to provide.
Yeah, I think we stuck with putting a lot of those user stories around the back end just due to how this was set up, where we did the back end first, and then with this project we did the front end. So we put a lot of time into the back end, and with the thought process of how the things need to connect and what we want to be able to do. And I feel that we just didn't. Maybe we should have paid a little more attention to maybe the front end thoughts a little bit as we were doing the back end, but when it came to the front end, it was let's get it to do what the back end can already do.
Yeah, like when we were developing the user stories, saying something like, as a user, I'd like to add a member to my group, and then breaking it down to like with using the username instead of the ID. A thing to do might have been to go back to the back end and then check, like, can we get this information? If I enter in a username, will the API know who that is and then add them to the group? That would have been a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's important to remember about the user stories too, is that when we built those out, sometimes they were general in terms of what the user experience would be. And there was a couple of different ways we could have implemented that particular functionality. And so I think that was the area that maybe through experience, probably when you're working on these types of things, in the end, well, this is going to be a little bit harder to implement in terms of code. And so you want to add this, you're going to want to add this requirement, that requirement, so that you know that you're going to be able to make the back end work together a little easier.
So I guess follow-on question for me then, if you had 2 weeks to do this project over again, would you do it front end then back end then front end, mix and match? Like, how would you approach the project if you had just 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, I think I would have done the front end first to know like what type of things we want the back end to be able to do, and then build the back end to feed that information into the front end that we've established.
I think I'd do mix and match personally.
Same, mix and match.
Yeah, I think if you can mix and match, you can say, okay, I want this is my idea for the back end, but then be able to switch over and say, okay, as a user, I'm going to want to be able to do this. And then that would help with the thought process of, okay, now we had that rough idea of the back end. Now let's just add a couple more things that will help the user experience along the way.
Right. I had one other question, and I'm blanking on it. Okay. All right, I guess the last question that we seem to have here, and so this is your chance to kind of pitch yourself. Who's your dream company or client to work with, given your new skill set? Anyone in particular that you want to put yourself out there for?
Yeah, Hy-Vee for me has been my target. I'd like to work at the Hy-Vee Innovation Center.
Right now, in the beginning of all this, I'm just looking for any company that has the team aspect. I want to be a part of a team, grow as a team, and also would like to work for a company that wants to always continuously improve their employees and see that they continue to grow instead of just getting good at one thing and then that's what you're going to be stuck doing.
I think I've been pretty vocal throughout the course that the end goal for me is to work for myself. But with that being said, anywhere where I think the environment is the most important. Having worked in places with toxic environments before, it's important to me not to return to that kind of work environment.
For me, I've spent most of my life, my career prior to this, working in education marketing. And so I would really like to work in a position that takes my marketing skills, marketing strategy background, customer journey background and experience, but also uses some of my new skill set. So the ability to understand the front end development and the technical side of it, maybe even working with requirements, working with databases. I love both parts of it.
Very cool. Well, we're about out of time. So I just want to thank the students again. I want to thank, NUOCO staff, DeltaV staff. It's a long program for the students. It's a long program for us, just kind of keeping this going. I did kind of miss a specific shout out. The students had all mentioned the career stuff. So David Tominski, Jennifer, oh my gosh, what's your last name? I'm tired. Murphy, yeah, that's the one. Jennifer Murphy. My father's not on the call, but he always sits in on one of the career workshops just for fun. So shout out to Commissioner Gordon. Samantha's involved. Aaron runs some of those. This is a team effort. I tend to be, multiple folks have said, Keith, you are DeltaV. Now it's a team effort, and I appreciate everybody who supports me. As supports all of us as we get through this. Thanks again to our sponsors, to UFG, Naomi. Thanks again for your great questions. Transamerica CCR, Leapfrog HLT, and MMS. So you can find all of our students on LinkedIn. Just Google them, and they should have a nice polished up LinkedIn and GitHub and all that stuff now, right, everyone? And then, DeltaV Code 101, send folks our way for that. Send folks our way for the ops curriculum, which is starting up here in just another 2-3 weeks. Hey, he's even got the slide. Lots of opportunities to do what these folks have done. If they can do it, you can too. All that sort of stuff. I'm going to stop talking. Aaron, anything to add?
Nope. I was just going to say we've also added a hire our students section on the website. So if you go to deltavcodeschool.com, under the About Us, there's hire our students. And so we will be getting these folks added to that page. And it's just kind of a cool overview of the folks that have been through our program that would love to hear from you if you're hiring. Naomi, thanks for dropping the link to UFG's open positions in the chat. Appreciate that. Students, check that out. Otherwise, just a huge congrats to all the students. It is really difficult to go through this program. I would argue it is even more difficult to go through this program in the year 2020. So hats off to all of you for making it through this program, and as rigorous as it is, and doing so successfully. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks everyone
everybody
who came.
for joining.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Have a good weekend.